Now, those blokes, I could cry. Every time I speak to them, I cry about some of the stuff that used to happen with the Yorkshire snipper. You did that once too, I reckon. You were guilty as well. I'd come out from batting and my belt would be, cut, my socks would be cut, my jocks would be cut. And I wonder, how do they have time to do that? And I worked out they had time because they were never batting long enough, and I was doing the batting. And I always used to get in trouble.
Welcome back to the Players Lounge VIP with me, Darren Gough, as usual. And today I've got a very, very special guest, a good friend of mine, played with him for many years. In fact, I'll go far as saying, out of all the people I've played with, probably the most talented on and off the pitch, an absolute diamond of a geezer. He ended up being my next door neighbour for a couple of years, and it's the one and only Darren Lehmann. Darren Lehmann, how are you doing, sir?
Hey, Ledge, how are you? Thanks for having me in the Players Lounge.
Yeah, it's been a while since I saw you. The last time I saw you was at Edinley when Ben Stokes managed to smash the Aussies to all parts in a game we all thought was done and dusted. And Ben Stokes, remember that, Buff, at Edinley, just absolutely
smashed it. I remember it well, Darren, yeah. Thanks for reminding me. Who holds the Ashes, by the way? Is it Australia or England? After that game, it's like England have regained the Ashes, but I think we still hold them, albeit on the back of that heroics from Stokes. They're still the most amazing day of cricket I've seen for a long period of time. And then the Oval, obviously England dominated that Test match. So, 2-2 was probably a fitting result in the end. But Australia feel like they probably missed a beat in that one. So it was an amazing Test series. And obviously we had a great time having a few beers and telling some old stories and just watching cricket. I mean, we're both cricket nuffies, even though you don't like to admit it too much. You're a bigger cricket nuffie as anyone else, and love watching good cricketers become great cricketers, and certainly Ben Stokes has become a great cricketer.
It was. I mean, like I said, when we just quickly on that game again, we worked together that whole game, and basically after, I think it was day 4, we basically said, that's job done. England have finished. Australia, that's it, going to dominate. You were taking a mickey out of every Englishman in the room. I'll never forget it. And then the next day, I just wish I'd had another day with you to talk about that day's play, because there'd have been so many people desperate to bump into you somewhere in Leeds that night and give you some stick.
I went in hiding, Goughy. I went hiding. I went out to Bradford, had a curry, and went to my room. That was it. I didn't see anyone. Mind you, I'm having a cup of tea, Goughy. I'm normally having a beer with you, and I'm having a cup of tea. That's unbelievable, isn't it? Yorkshire tea, of course.
But do you know something, mate? This is where we're going to start, because we normally start this, the Players Lounge, with a relaxed atmosphere. You're in an hotel, I think, aren't you? Are you in Canberra?
We're in Canberra, right, mate, for a BBL game, right?
Yeah, BBL game. So, like I say, I normally start is, what are you drinking? Because I've normally got a glass of wine on me, Buff. It depends what health kick I'm on at this moment. Or I've got a beer. You have definitely always got a beer in your hand, right? Normally have a beer in your hand. I know we'll get onto that later. But today, mate, I've got a water. Can you believe it? Because it's only 10:15 here in the UK. So probably late at night for you, isn't it?
Well, it's only 9:15 here, Goughy. So I went to the pub, had a couple of beers and a feed, and then I knew I had to come back, speak to you. So I've got a water on one side, a cup of tea on the other. Very unheard of. I'll tell you what does that to you. A triple bypass heart attack will make you actually stop drinking a bit.
I know, that did shock me, and we will get onto that later, Buff, because I know you've been doing a lot of good stuff for that as well. I mean, Buff, if you were there now on your own, what would you be doing? Would you be listening to music, or would you be watching TV, Netflix? Or would you be watching old clips of your batting?
Oh, no, that'd bore. I had to get lucky to get runs. I'd watch Netflix or shows. I mean, Peaky Blinders is my favourite, obviously. I love that. I can't wait for the series. And I'll tell you what, I love The Crown, actually. I've just finished The Crown, the last series of The Crown. So I'm a bit of a royalist at heart, Goughy. I love it. I know a lot of Australia want to go to a republic, but I love the royal family. So, and that probably comes from my days at Yorkshire with how strong everyone was about the royal family when I played there. So Netflix, I'm definitely Netflix and a bit of Stan. My daughter gets me to watch stuff. I listen to music. My daughter puts me on the music. I don't even know the words half the time. I just move my head like that, and it looks like I'm doing the right thing. I've got no idea. So it's like with kids, mate.
Yeah, I mean, hey, we're coming to TV. The Peaky Blinders is obviously great. It's one of my favourites. But I am obsessed with a programme called The Vikings, Buff. I mean, being a Yorkshireman, right? Well, honorary Yorkshireman, which we are, we class you as a Yorkie. You should love the Vikings, Yorkshire Vikings and all that, and York with the museum. Yeah. You've got to watch The Vikings. It is out of this world. It's sensational. It's addictive.
I've heard about it, but all right, I'm onto it.
Let's talk about the Darren Lehmann story. Where did it all start? Have you always been a cricket buff since you were little, or did you like other sports? I mean, where did it all start for you?
Well, I sort of fell into cricket a little bit. I loved Aussie Rules, our game out here. And in those days, 1970 odd, when I was born, 77, I played my first game of cricket, and was on the back of actually watching David Hookes, hit that English captain of yours from South Africa, Tony Gregg, around for 5 fours. God bless his soul, both of them actually. They're both since passed, but that got me into the game as a left-hander in terms of cricket. And I played a game with a guy called Peter Gladigo, who lived in Whyalla, a country town, and both our dads were policemen. So I managed to play a game early. I got a first ball duck and got one for as a young kid, and just loved the game, played it every afternoon in the summer. And then in the winter over here, a bit like your summer, it's cricket, and then it's obviously football in the winter for you guys. So no different to us. And I sort of played both sports till I was about 17, 18, and I was playing state cricket at the time. And, little did I know I'd actually, play my first game with my hero and David Hookes. So I was very fortunate in that through the grades as such. But I also played reserves football, a bit like you played, second-tier football for, who was it, Barnsley? Yeah.
Rotherham.
So my team,
Barnsley and Rotherham, yeah.
Rotherham. Right, yeah. So my team was Central Districts, and I played reserves and had a couple of good games. I thought, I'm going to make it in the football field, and I thought, well, I'll have another crack at it. And I went to training one night, and the coach said, look, if you defend, we'll put you in the league side the next week. So I played the following week and had a great game, but I didn't defend at all, Goughy. I just wanted to attack and kick goals, and didn't worry about my teammate, the opposition player I was standing. He had an unbelievable game, a blinder, and kicked a couple of goals. And I went to training the next week all excited that I played league footy. And the bloke said, Neil Curley, who's one of the all-time greats he's like he's not as good as Sir Alex Ferguson, but that regard in our Aussie rules football. And he said to me, what did I tell you last week? I said, defend, but, we won the game and I had a lot of touches. He said, I hear you're good at cricket. I said, yeah, I'm not bad. He said, well, piss off and play cricket. You're not playing footy anymore, kid. So this is a 17-year-old. I packed my bags in the locker and I went straight to South Australia and Adelaide Oval and just concentrated on cricket. So I miss footy. I love the other side of the game. I love the football side of it. But that's how I sort of, coming through the ranks, you played rep footy and rep cricket and you had to make a choice. Now, that was always hard, but he made it a lot easier for me. I always buy him a carton of beer when I see him in Adelaide because he made the right choice for me, where it was quite hard for me because I loved them both and I wasn't sure, but he was convinced I was, excuse the French, a shit footballer, go and play cricket.
Well, listen, we all love a little bit of honesty here and there, and it was the right choice, Buff, without a doubt. I mean, I think you had a successful career and continue to have that successful career. I mean, what was your first job? Because obviously, I've done quite a few jobs. I worked on the motorways. I think we've had that chat before. Worked on the motorways on the M62. You know it well, having lived in Leeds for many years. That was hard work, and that was the wake-up call for me. I'd played professional cricket, but in the winter, I still had to have a job to earn money, obviously to live, because I wasn't earning that much money as a young cricketer. And working on the motorways was a big wake-up call for me and made me work even harder. Was there a moment for you when you were working and you thought, I've got to do something special here because I need to get out of what I'm doing? Or
I worked on an assembly line for a car manufacturer, General Motors Holdens in Elizabeth, where Jimmy Barnes is from, who you would know is a famous singer in our era. But I worked there for sort of 2 years while I was still playing cricket and sort of committing as a young player, apprenticeship and all that on the line. But and I remember I would sort of get paid without leave to go and play state cricket, and I love that. And then I'd come home and go, oh, I've got the early morning get up at 6 o'clock factory line on the line from 6 till 3, and then I didn't drive in those days, so you get the train and then get to Adelaide Oval and train and then get home at 8 o'clock and back up at 6 to the factory. And it was a great experience though, Goughy. It's sort of surreal because if I didn't have those times for a couple of years on that assembly line, I wouldn't have understood, what life's about, I suppose. You saw a lot of grown men go through a lot of different things at that time, and I was only a kid having fun. But I remember they'd come up to me and say, and you probably shouldn't do this, but, they'd say, can you put a manual transmission in automatic, just so it stops the line for 20 minutes so we can't have a smoke and things like that. But just the people you meet, the genuine people that, love sport. And I saw it on their face. They knew what I was doing every time. If I had a good game or a bad game, they'd come and speak to me, and all the people knew what I was doing. So it's sort of, you sort of wanted to play for them a little bit. It sort of woke you up out of that, day-to-day grind to say, right, these people want me to actually go and perform at a level that gets me to another stage in my life, I suppose. I loved my time there, but also realised that, the cricket was going to be it. I wanted to make it as a cricketer, and I was lucky enough and fortunate enough that I had great mentors along the way and people that sort of pushed me into the sides earlier than probably you were supposed to be. Because as we know, if you don't sort of fit a mould, which, probably if we're fair, you and I don't really fit a generic mould of how you should look and feel and, the way you do things, sometimes you get held back. So I was lucky enough that I always got pushed along by different people and got I always deserved it because I always made enough runs to get picked at the next level. But also you still got to be pushed along by different people. So I was lucky, I think, Goughy, to go through that era of life where, you meet so many different people from so many different walks of life, and you go through that, which is a great experience.
It is indeed. I mean, talking about nicknames, Buff, because we had a good mate of yours, Jason Gillespie, on the other day, and he actually got stuck into it. He said, well, Darren Lehmann came up with the nickname Big Nose for him when he was a young player at South Australia. He said he didn't really use his imagination that much in you nicknaming him Big Nose. Where does your nickname come from, Buff?
Well, again, younger, and you're trying to explain this, and you'll know when you used to have the fresh locks, and I used to have. If you can picture this for our listeners and viewers, if you can picture me having befont hair like a afro, and it was right down when I was younger, right down to here, and then obviously I started playing cricket and I lost it all with all the stress. So the Buff became, Buff Ed became Buff, basically. A guy from at my primary school and then high school, Johnny Giannetto, gave it to me. And it's just stuck ever since. So it's one of those things that you get along the way, don't you?
It suits you though, doesn't it? Buff is just, I reckon more people call you Buff than they would Darren or anything else. Buff is just you, isn't it?
Yeah, well, if one of the players now call me Darren, I think who they're talking to. If they say Buff or Coach, I'll turn around straight away. But if they say Darren, I go, well, who's Darren? Oh, that's me. Oh, yeah, that's what it's like.
Have you ever thought of advanced air studios, Buff? I mean,
you tried to get me, didn't you?
Yeah, it works for me, mate. Mine's my.
Yeah, you tried to get me at my brother-in-law's wedding. I remember that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yours looks good. I'm not sure how I look with hair anymore. The beard's where I've gone, Goughy. I've just grown that, and that's stuck now. I grew that on a holiday about 2 years ago, and I haven't changed now. So that's where I've gone.
Well, I'm still at the stage where I can't grow a beard. This is as good as it gets, Buff. It's a little bit grey, so you can't even see it either, which is quite unfortunate, especially when you've got dark hair, grey at the sides. But Anyway, I mean, what I want to get into, Buff, is, but obviously a very, very successful career over in Australia. And when we signed you as an overseas player, I don't think we realised at the time what we was getting. Like I say, you rocked up, very, very relaxed, great around the lads, became one of the lads straight away. And if you speak to now, and this is a huge compliment to a lot of the young players that were coming through the game now, and you ask them their heroes or the best player to play with, and every single one of them would say Darren Lehmann. That's a huge compliment to yourself, isn't it?
Oh, it is, mate. It's. I mean, I wouldn't have been the player I was without Yorkshire, definitely. I didn't know what I was getting in for, and if I tell the story a little bit, I remember the '87 Ashes series, and you would have been. Were you playing that series? Did you play for England in that series?
I was 17, mate. I didn't play for England until I was 23. I was actually on the covers in '89.
You would have been. There you go. So that's just memory from heart attack, mate. So apologies, but. I mean, for me, going back in '87, and Doug Paget was the coach then, and David Bias was the captain, and I rocked up. And before that, I was going to go to Hampshire, and I was as a replacement for Hayden, who was going to be on the Ashes series. And then Hayden got dropped, and Michael Slater got picked, who was going to be the Yorkshire pro for Michael Bevan for 1 year. And, of course, you and Michael Bevan and Tracy and all that and the whole crew are great mates. So I ended up coming to Yorkshire through that sort of back door, if you like, because Michael Slater got picked and Hayden went to Hampshire. And I remember I was 12th man in my first game for Yorkshire at Lancashire, in a Benson Hedges Cup game. And I can remember David Byers coming out and I'm out of the wicket going, wow, that's flat. I don't think they can get me out. And he said, it's going to be pretty hard. I said, yeah, I reckon it's hard, mate. He goes, it's pretty hard. You're not playing. And I said a few things I would normally say off air, Goughy. To him, I said, are you kidding me, mate? You got me all this way not to play on that wicket. They're not getting me out. And I had to go and run over the other side. You know that stand on the other side where the new stand is now? And they were singing, who's that fat bastard all the time. They were giving it to me, the Red Rose County. And ever since then, I sort of had that love-hate relationship with obviously Lancashire, Yorkshire as such, and loved it. I mean, they were fantastic to play in front of. And every time I played Lancashire, it was like I needed to perform at a level that actually won the game each and every time against them, mainly because of the crowd. So Yorkshire was Yorkshire, when I went there, you had to train in whites, which I couldn't believe. I was shocked. You couldn't wear an earring. I had an earring. And you had to be freshly shaven, and I had a goatee, right? And I also didn't know that you got fined 15 quid each time you didn't do that. So I remember the first month you got your paycheck, and at the end of the month I'd still done the same. I'm not training whites. I'm here to play cricket, and I'm not shaving my beard because that's not going to make me play a cover drive any better. And I'm not taking my earring out, mate, because as long as I can hear him say yes, no, or wait, I'll be okay. And Doug Paget was just, he was a ripper. I mean, one of the best I came across, and so was the gaffer David Byers. So they were fantastic. All that. And I remember at the end of getting a paycheck, and I had £1,000 in fines in those days, which is a lot of money. And I went to the office, and I was trying to think who the CEO was. Chris Hassel or someone like that would have been
Chris Hassel, yeah.
CEO. Yeah, and Sir Lawrence Byford would have been the president. I said, what's this about? You got to wear whites, and you got to take your earring out, you got to have a shave. And I said, well, I'm not doing that. So you're going to have to fine me every month, and I'll make a lot of runs, so that's fine. And then at the end of the year, I'll be off. And I just went out and made unbelievable amount of runs because I was only playing a year to fill in for Michael Bevan. And about 2 or 3 months in, I'd re-signed, made the decision there because they knew I wasn't in the Australian mix and I was going to be around a bit. But the pressure to perform was quite high. I love the passion from the Yorkshire fans. I mean, it was indebted to that they made me a better cricketer and a better person, Yorkshire people, because they expected such high expectations of their overseas and their English players, as you well know, Darren, to actually perform and win games for for Yorkshire each and every time. So that was a great learning, and that helped me become a better professional, a better cricketer, and impart knowledge on those young kids where I could, because it wasn't just about making runs. It was about helping the younger guys get better where they could. I remember someone like Michael Vaughan. I remember batting with him one day, and he would block the crap out of it. And I said, "What are you doing, mate?" Jeffrey Boycott's one of my heroes as well. I mean, he was batting like Jeffrey Boycott. I said, "The game's moving on, mate. Get on. Otherwise, I'm going to run you out, pal. And if you don't get on with it, if a spinner bowls, hit him out of the park and let's get moving. Let's get the game going." But that was very untraditional, like I suppose, of a Yorkshire way of thinking, because it was quite aggressive. We always had a great attack. I mean, when we first there was yourself, Chris Silverwood, Peter Hartley, so Sidebottom was in. There were so many good bowlers.
Hogarth. That you can go on and on. Hogarth, Craig White.
Yeah, you can go through many. There was always going to get 20 wickets. It's just how you made enough runs. So that was the pressure on the overseas. But for me, it was just a special experience. I mean, I can't. It's hard to put in words, Goughy. It changed my life. One, I obviously met Andrea, my wife there, which is Craig White's sister, which I'm sure you'll get onto later. But more so the friends I made for life. That was the thing for me. And the laughter. I mean, I played with a couple of the funniest people I've ever played with in my life, and you being one of them. But Anthony McGrath is the funniest person I've ever met in my life. And Gavin Hamilton is a close second, and Alex Morris is a close third. Now, those blokes, I could cry. Every time I speak to them, I cry about some of the stuff that used to happen with the Yorkshire snipper. You did that once too, I reckon. You were guilty as well. I'd come out from batting and my belt would be, cut, my socks would be cut, my jocks would be cut. And I wonder, how do they have time to do that? And I worked out they had time because they were never batting long enough, and I was doing the batting. And I always used to get in trouble.
It was amazing, the Yorkshire snipper. For those who don't know, it went on for about a couple of years, and we had a very, very close dressing room, right? We might not have won stuff back then, early doors, but we had some very talented players, some big characters, some great personalities. You just talked about Anthony McGrath, hilarious character, Gavin Hamilton, Richard Blakey, Alex Morris, Buff himself, me, Craig White, who was the quiet one, quiet assassin, Chalky. But we had so many good characters, and what was happening is this Yorkshire snipper. It's still famous to this day, and still no one has admitted to being the snipper. And they were going around cutting people's bottom of their socks off, or cutting their belt, or cutting the crutch out of their underpants. So when they lifted it up, they went up by your head. And this went on for a couple of years. Did you play the game at Worcester when we never warmed up because the captain, Byers, said, "We're not playing this game, not starting this game, till someone admits to being the Yorkshire snipper so we can get on with the rest of the season"? And we never did a warm-up before a game against Worcester. It was a massive game. Oh, it was not Worcester, it was Sussex. James Kirtley's debut for Sussex. I'll never forget it. We did no warm-up whatsoever.
You probably would have won as well. There was that much talent in the side. I mean, that was a year before I got there, but it just got bigger and bigger, and there was multiple snippers, of course. But I mean, some of the things that happened. I mean, Anthony McGrath, we had a night out with him, and I think you might have been there. And we ended up staying at his house on a pre-season set up at Yorkshire when I first arrived, and he used to call it the Coop, his house. And we had a drink, and we out at Wakefield actually, and we went home, and we got home, and his car wasn't there when we woke up, and neither was his TV, his PlayStation, his motorbike. Everything had been stolen while we were asleep, a little bit hungover, obviously. And he thought we'd parked his car somewhere else, and then he realised his TV is gone, his PlayStation 5 had gone, or whatever it was. And he was just a funny man. He used to do things like take car tyres off, or he did one to me at Somerset. Now, Somerset to Yorkshire is how far? 5 hours, Goughy, by car?
Yeah, 5 hours.
In those days, he took the front of my radio off. You press the button in those days and the radio face comes off and the aerial, so you can't use it. So I had 5 hours on my own, no radio, no, couldn't talk to anyone, no nothing. So I sold his car once. I did sell his car once. I think he sold someone's house once. These are the things to do, by the way, people listening. You shouldn't do that anymore, but it was quite funny, some of the stuff.
It was. We had a great team spirit, without a doubt. I mean, one of the biggest honours that you received from me as well, Buff, and how important you were for Yorkshire. When they're talking about the greatest players of all time, the members voted for that, and that is a massive, massive thing. We've had some great players play for Yorkshire over the years, and you were the only non-English player, or I could say the kind of non-Yorkshire player, who actually got voted by the members in their best 11 of all time. I mean, that is a huge, huge honour. Because we've had some good overseas players. We've had Tendulkar, Bevan, Lehmann, Martin, Yuvraj Singh. He wasn't so good for us. He didn't play very well for us. But Inzamam ul-Haq, Yunus Khan. I mean, but you were the player named in there.
Yeah, well, it's a huge honour. Obviously, you don't play for the accolades, but that one is a huge honour because it's voted by the members. Obviously, committee supported and all that, and the players. So to get recognised like that, it's just, I suppose, all the work you put in along the way, helping everyone else out and playing as well as you tried to play each time for Yorkshire, because it's not. Even though it wasn't my home county, it became my home county, almost adopted county, as you said, because it was just so regular when I kept coming back. I loved it. It was so normal. And obviously you have family members there now. But the people and the members were they were just unbelievable. Fascinating, supportive. They would criticise you if you didn't play well, and that was understandable. It was very much like you get in Australia, in some parts of Australia, actually, the sort of support and then also the disappointment that you get. And that's what you want from your fans. That's why we play the game. We want to cheer them up each and every day. I remember, playing with you one day. I reckon it was a day early doors, and I was just a bit down, and you were always bubbly. And I remember you saying to me, what's going on, Pro? And I was just feeling a bit flat. And you would say, it's just a game of cricket. Let's get moving. I mean, let's get going. And you're exactly right. That's how you got to play the game. Let's get going. Let's get moving. Let's cheer people up. Let's play the game as it should be played, and make sure people enjoy it. And I was lucky enough to hopefully make some people happy at Yorkshire and hopefully around the world, that when I played, I entertained, and hopefully that was the case. And to get those awards, it's a personal recognition, and one I'm indebted to, mainly because if I didn't have Yorkshire, I wouldn't have been the player or the person I've become.
Definitely. I mean, one of the things at Yorkshire, you were my neighbour, as I said, for a couple of seasons before you got your own pad when you became a regular at Yorkshire. Just one of the lads.
Good neighbour, Gough.
Yeah, you've a good house though, that wasn't it, Buff? We had a nice little house in the country. Wasn't bad for an overseas player, that wasn't it? A couple of acres in the country, a few sheep and a cow. But when it comes down to it, you met your missus, didn't you, Andrea, Craig White's sister? I mean, that would have been a sensitive issue at that time. And knowing Craig White as well as I do, having toured with him, for you to obviously end up going out with his sister, that must have been a strange time for you, Daz.
It was a little bit cold at stages, Goughy, yes. I remember when I first sort of started seeing Andrea, we played a game at Scarborough, and I remember walking at bat, and I'd been running late because I'd obviously been speaking with Andrea. I was running late for the game, and it was just a charity game. It might have been a benefit game, and I always played the benefit games for the beneficiary, whoever it was, but I just said, look, I don't want to bat. I'll bat 7, and go walk around the ground and say hello to everyone, bowl a few overs, and then off I go. So that particular day was the day after, and I remember we were batting because we always batted first. I don't even remember who we were playing. I think Durham in the Northern Electric Trophy, it was called. It was the biggest trophy you've ever seen. Yeah, and it's sort of the Army or Navy trophy it was, but it was for benefit. And I remember playing, hey lads, throw them late, and no one spoke to me. I mean, not a person spoke to me. So someone lost the wicket they had names on the board, what number you were batting. So I put my pads on, and no one spoke to me. So I walked out the bat, and I was batting with, not then my brother-in-law, but Craig White. So I walked out, took guard, hit a few runs, and and I go up to him. He doesn't move. He's on strikers in. And I go, well, he's not speaking. That's a bit weird. Anyway, so I just go back, don't think anything of it. Over he hits a few, and then he just stood at the end. Overcalled, he just stands there, doesn't move. Not one person spoke to me for the whole day, Goughy. You try and think about that. Not even a hello. Like David Bias, Chris Silverwood, Gavin Hamilton, Anthony Craig White, Michael Vaughan, Gary Fellows, you name them, they were there in this game, and Richard Blakey, and no one spoke to me. I fielded it slip when we come to turn at fielding with David Bias at first, me at second, and Richard Blakey. And I said, what's going on, Blakes? And he literally said to me, nothing, not a single thing. So he walked the other end, and I went, I'm going to the boundary, fielded on the boundary. At the end of the day, someone accidentally spoke to me, and the whole team roared in laughter because it cost them 12 pints. Whoever spoke to me first had to pay 12 pints. Now, how tight some of those players were, Goughy. Dan from Yorkshire, someone would wear it, and to spend 12 pints, first word they had to speak to me was quite entertaining. So a little bit different with Chalky. Obviously we're very close as brother-in-laws, etc. And Andrea obviously misses him. He's over here with me, but we try and get back there where we can and catch up. But he's been a great man, a legend. Went down to Hampshire to coach, and he's back in Yorkshire now. So yeah, it's always good. But it was a little bit frosty in the first few months, mate.
I remember it was absolutely hilarious. Let's say Chalky, he's quite quiet, isn't he? But that one really rattled his cage for a while until he, of course, found out you were seriously in love with Andrea, and it all ended happily ever after. I mean, what was it like playing against each other, though, as brother-in-laws? That must have been weird, one playing for Australia, one playing for England.
Yeah, it was, mate. Obviously playing, I remember you getting, I can remember most of my dismissals, actually, in Test match cricket, because I didn't have too many. But you got me out court at MCG in a Boxing Day Test match, and he got me out the following series, caught in Adelaide by Andrew Flintoff, and then caught at fine leg, hooking him in one of the games. So, you boys worked me over a couple of times in Test match career, but it is weird. But I've always been lucky enough, Goughy, I suppose, just to play the ball or the game, not worry about who's delivering it or who's playing or what's being said. I just played the game, so I was a bit lucky there.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes down to the national team, Buff, why do you think you didn't get selected in those early days? I mean, there was a huge competition in the 90s. Like, let's get it straight. I mean, some of the players that didn't play a test match or played one test match, there were some superb players. There was a list of players waiting to get into that national side. Why do you think it took so long for you to get recognised?
Oh, there was so many good players, Goughy, and probably I didn't conform to probably the athletic type that you play a certain way. So that was my fault. That was no one else. I mean, people say I didn't get on with Bob Simpson, and I probably didn't at the time, but he was actually teaching me the right way to go about it, and I probably didn't listen enough, to be fair. So that was all my fault than anyone else's. I had a great career. I was lucky enough to represent, obviously, my country, my state, and obviously county. And have many fond memories. But in terms of Test cricket, I probably should have played more, but I didn't do the things I probably should have done when I was younger. And you learn that as you get older. So, for me as a coach, it's a lot different. I can relate to those players that either get dropped or don't get picked enough and talk through what you're feeling, because I know what they're feeling all the time. So it's disappointing. All you could do is make runs, and that's all I try to do, and play the game in front of me. So whatever game I was playing, whether it was a club game or a county game or a state game or a charity game, I just played that game and then worried about the end result. Once it's all finished, we move to the next game. And with that, then that's great, and just enjoyed whatever game I was playing, really. But it was all my fault. It wasn't anyone else's. I should have been better when I was younger.
Well, that was a golden generation of players, though, wasn't it? That 90s team. I think you got picked, actually, in Sydney, a 12th man, I think, for one of the games. You didn't play in that 94 series. You were 12th man for it. You got called up into the squad and didn't play. But that squad then, some of the players, there's some great players, wasn't there, around there with the War brothers?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Well, I actually got picked before Mark War. It was 1990. So I was only 20 and I got picked, but I was 12th man. I was 12th man for that game and the first 3 one-days. And to be fair, I probably should have played one of those games, maybe not a test match, but certainly one of the one-days. But it just didn't work out. And, I don't blame anyone. It's just the way it is. That's the cricket. But, you had Border, Boone, Jones, War, there was a pretty good plethora of players there. So for me, it was a case of timing a little bit. I mean, you look at some of the great players that have missed out along the way. Stuart Law could have played, Jamie Simmons, a lot of good players that could have played a lot. And we were lucky to be in that era, though, as well, because it was a lot of fun and it was really competitive. So, today, sometimes if you have a couple of good games, you're straight into a side somewhere with the amount of cricket they play in the different formats. But for us, you had to play a lot of consistently good cricket to get picked.
I mean, obviously you had a successful career in one-day cricket, Buff. I mean, what were the highlights for you? Would it have been the World Cup final?
Oh, yeah, they're probably the highlights, aren't they? You've seen the emotions with England last year. So the World Cup is the biggest one, isn't it? It's still bigger than the World T20. It might not be in 50 years or 100 years. The World T20 might be the biggest, or World T10 or whatever, World 100, whatever it ends up going to. I mean, for me, the World Cups are huge. I mean, 99, we came from nowhere really on the back of Steve Ward's heroics when he got that 100 against South Africa. And we managed to beat Pakistan in the final and win the last 7 on the trot. And then in 03, we were favourites, or South Africa were favourites in South Africa. And we had, Warnie obviously had the suspension just before the World Cup. And he went home. Brad Hogg came on board then, and we didn't lose a game. That was amazing. Did not lose a game that whole series. You played in that. It was unbelievable. I mean, we almost should have lost to you guys actually at Port Elizabeth, and then Andy Bickle got 7 for. And then the following year, the 07 year, Australia didn't lose a game again in the West Indies. I mean, the World Cups are pretty special. So to go 12 years without losing the games, right up there. So I was fortunate enough to play with some of the greats and the way they played the game, very aggressive, as you know, and always taking the game on. So I would say if I had to pick highlights from there, it'd be World Cup finals, I would think.
Absolutely. That great Australian side. What about playing in the IPL and coaching in the IPL? Buff, I'd missed out on the IPL. I would have loved to have played in it. I think you, towards the end of your career, got a go at it. And then you ended up coaching in it. So what was that experience like for you?
It was an amazing experience, Coffee. The hardest thing was I'd finished playing. I'd resigned myself to retiring. So I'd already retired from first-class cricket. So I'd been out of the game for about 4 months, I suppose. And they were just short. Rajasthan Royals were just short because of the international commitments. And no one knew where it was going to go. So I actually played the first game of the IPL for Rajasthan Royal, the first 2 until one of the overseas, it would have been Graham Smith, came back in. Now, I only played 2 games, and that was, I knew I was finished when I was facing Brett Lee bowling to me in a game in Mohali, and he was fast. And, when you face fast bowling, you're not that confident, Darren. You might say you're a little bit shaky ground. Well, I was on very shaky ground this day, and I realised I should have retired. But I was also fortunate enough to be involved with Warnie and Darren Berry, and then I got a call the following year to go and coach Deccan Chargers in those days, who was their main players were Gilchrist, and who's a great mate of mine, and Andrew Simons, also a great mate. And they'd finished last, but they'd had, a pretty good list. and they only won 2 or 3 games, I think, and they'd heard a lot of things about Rajasthan Royals, who were achievers and ended up winning it, or they weren't expected to win it, and they actually won it the first year. And I was lucky enough to take that job on and went from bottom to top. So it was a bit of luck. It was all time. I mean, people say it's coaching. Players do a lot of it. Coaches, we just really try and guide the players, I think. But learning about the coaching side of it with, the different religions involved and different nationalities. I mean, we had Pakistan, Sri Lankan, New Zealand, Australia. So we had them all covered. And then also the different religions that go with that. We couldn't trade Friday at midday, obviously, because of Muslims. So we couldn't do that. We had a few of those in there. We had to chop and change there. We had to try in at different times on a Sunday. So all those things come into it, and it was a great learning experience for me as a coach, and how you go about it in terms of working a group of different nationalities, different religions together, and trying to get the best outcome. So great upbringing as a coach, and then obviously went back to Australia and coached Queensland before getting obviously the Australian job.
I mean, I remember seeing you when your first stint with Queensland and stuff like that. But when you got appointed the Australia coach, that must have been a proud moment for you, Buff. I mean, when you're a player, like you said, you've always been a cricket nut, loved the game, successful career, coached in the IPL. But to get the Australian job, that must have been so special for you. A huge, huge job.
Yeah, it's a big job, mate. It's the best way. It's the best job in the world. I'll say it now. It's still the best job in the world. I think one of the things you do know about it is there's so much expectation out there to win both home and away. What I loved about it was a bit unexpected, to be fair, because Mickey Arthur obviously they wanted to move on Mickey, and I was just literally over there helping the Australian A team out. And I was about to go on 2 weeks holiday with Andrea and the kids, and the twins were only, well, what would they have been at the time? Probably, so 2013, they would have been, 9, 10, and we were going to go to Europe and have 2 weeks and, just relax and enjoy after being away so long. And then, one day they're going away to Europe and I'm going down to Taunton to coach the Australian cricket team. So things changed very quickly. I remember walking around the ground at Bristol in the Australian A game, and one of the bosses said to me, "Would you like to coach the Australian cricket team?" And I said, yeah, I'll give it a go in a few years with a bit more experience. And they said, "Well, you've got the job." And I said, "When?" They said, "Tomorrow." And I said, blah, 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 blah. And then actually walked around and had an interview and spoke to the people involved, and then spoke to my wife, and she said, "Well, what do you reckon?" I said, I don't know. I'm going to be away a lot. Yeah, and you're away 300 days a year, Goughy, as a senior coach. International is too much. It's actually too much. I don't think you can do – what I've seen is there's no way you should be doing all one format. There's got to be almost 2 coaches now. It's too hard on your body, too hard on your mind, too hard on your relationships, and just too hard, mate. Just too hard. That's the best way to describe it. But it was a fantastic 5 years, and I was fortunate enough to have great support. And and probably, people say when's the time was right. I probably should have stopped actually before South Africa. I should have stopped maybe against England, because that had been a full 4.5 non-stop. So for me, I probably did it a bit too long. I think looking back now, I think a World Cup cycle is about right. 300 days a year is plenty for anyone. So I think you've got to have help. I mean, Chris Silverwood, I think he's on his own, isn't he? He's doing it all himself.
Well, he's changed it slightly, Buff. What he's done is they call them assistant coaches, and they've got Graham Thorpe in and Paul Collingwood. Yeah. They're now wanting to get a bowling coach on. I mean, obviously, I went to New Zealand with them and helped. Yeah. But I'm with you. For me, that job offer was there. But for me to go away for those amount of time a year, it's just not. It's not what I want to do. And I agree totally with you. I think now coaching has got to become a sport where you have a test coach and then you have an ODI coach or T20 coach, because the time Chris Silverwood's going to be away, catching up on all the series because of COVID, and Justin Langer with Australia, it's horrendous the amount of days they're going to be away and the pressure and stress they're going to be put under.
Yeah, it is, mate. I think they've got to look at that, how all home boards deal with that. So I know Jay also, obviously he's a workaholic, and Chris is the same. But you'll get to the stage when you've got to catch up on all these tours and non-stop. You're never going to be home. So I think that's the way the world and the game is going, really.
When you look back at your series you coached Australia, would 2013-14, because the turnaround from losing in your first series, because you got the job, like I say, a couple of days before that, that was always just going to be a warm-up series for you. Was that series when you rinsed England 5-0 the highlight?
Highlight of what, the actual performances, or highlight of my coaching?
Yeah,
which one do you
want? Coaching, because that was quite early, wasn't it, Buff, in your coaching journey?
Yeah, I'll give you a couple. So one, I mean, I couldn't change the side in that Tuesday. I had the side selected already.
Yeah.
And one thing I thought you needed to do against England was you had to pick all right-handers to negate Graham Swan. You know, because he was a big part of why they were so good. So he could roll out one end, and you had Anderson, Broad, and I'm just trying to think who might have been Wood and not Jones.
Tremlett? Was Tremlett in there? Bresnan?
No. Middlesex, opening bowler, Finn. Finn was there. Yeah, sorry. And I said, well, if they're coming to Australia, we need some pace. We need wheels. To ruffle up the batters and knock over the tail. So we were just going to out and out bounce the tail. And Michael just brilliantly jumped on board, and we just went for it. And we picked all right-handers, and Swan got negated quite quickly. We bounced out the tail quite a lot. England, that series, actually batted quite well for the first 4 or 5 wickets, but once they were 5 down, she was all over. It was all gone. So that was probably tactically and the best series. We couldn't believe we won 5-0. That was amazing. But you get lucky occasionally. If I talk about my best coaching moment, it would be, and it's a little bit different, Goughy, but it's how we dealt with Philip Hughes, how we managed to play the game of cricket again not so long after Philip Hughes passing, and how we tried to manage through that process. And it's always a little bit hard to sort of speak about, but it's quite therapeutic as well. Obviously a lot harder for his family. But, we sort of played, and we played in last time we saw him was the last time I saw him was in Dubai for a test series. Then he went back to Shield cricket, and then you get the phone call and you head down to Sydney. And I remember I lost a great mate of mine, David Hooks, to a one punch in a club, and I was there that night as well. So I sort of knew what was going on with Philip Hughes, and having dealt with the emotions of that as a player with David Hooks, and then as a coach, I sort of tried to relate a little bit. But we had lots of help behind the scenes with people, psychologists and family members and that. But those 2 weeks were probably the toughest. No sleep, just trying to get people to try and maybe, talk about it first, somehow memory, have a decent memorial for him, and then try and play some cricket and represent Philip in the best possible way. And then we had that unbelievable test match in Adelaide. Before that, he passed away, and about a week later we were playing test match cricket at Adelaide Oval. And the way the boys, and look, you got to remember, no one spoke hardly at all, apart from their feelings. We didn't really worry. We just went out and played the game, and it ended up being the most amazing game with Nathan Lyon getting, I think, 13 for the game, and Virat Kohli getting 200s. And I think we won in the last 40 minutes of the game, and they were chasing, and they got within 40 or 50 runs. It was, a really unbelievable test match. And then the relief of everyone and the emotion of everyone after that to get through it. And just thank Philip Hughes. And I remember singing the team song around the 408 banner on the ground, and that was really emotional. So that was probably the best somehow coaching highlight, if you like, to get players somehow to play that series or that test match. Because that changed. That actually changed the game. Really, remember bats out for everyone. Everyone had bats out, and New Zealand played a day of Test match cricket without appealing. So a lot of people went about things a different way then.
Yeah, it was definitely a game changer. That I remember the news when it hit England, and we had to talk about it on radio, and I got emotional, and I didn't really know him, Buff, but it was a very emotional time because we've all got children who love the game, who play. And like I say, it's just an accident. But the way the game changed with that, with the helmets and everything, it was definitely a game changer for everyone involved in the game of cricket. If I can go on to it, Buff, just quickly, I know you've talked about it in the past, but the worst bit would have probably been the sandpaper scandal for you as a coach. I mean, that must have been a difficult period of your life to try and manage what was going on as a coach and keep the players focused, as well as trying to manage what was going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, it was a tough time, Ledge, definitely. And, as coach, you've got to take responsibility for that. That's part and parcel of what happened, should have happened, and it did. So that happens on my watch, and, that's part and parcel of that. No one – that's a mistake made by many people. I just don't blame three people. All of us got to take responsibility for that. And I think back now, it's a great learning curve. You always got to learn from mistakes that happen. It's really interesting because I think it's straightened the game up. I think it's been good for the game in a weird way.
Definitely.
It's wrong what happened. It's totally wrong. Don't get me. And I sincerely apologise to anyone that's listening and watching, because it shouldn't have happened, and we take responsibility for that. But you don't see much reverse anymore. You don't see much sledging anymore. You don't see much normal swing anymore. Even in England, it doesn't swing as much as it used to. I mean, the game itself is probably straightened up a little bit, which is probably there's something good that comes out of bad, and that may be the thing. I don't know. Your thoughts might be different. I just noticed that everything's a little bit more normal in the game.
No, I totally agree with you. Again, I think it was another moment where people stood up and realised, but it wasn't just Australia. There was problems within the game that needed straightening out, and I think that one moment changed a lot the way a lot of people looked at the game again. So something good came out of it. Buff, you're absolutely 100%. So obviously then you spent a bit of time out of the game to reflect. You would have been exhausted. You'd have needed that break. But obviously you live on the Gold Coast. You've returned as coach of the Brisbane Heat. You're currently playing in the Big Bash. You love your work. You love your job, Buff, coaching the Brisbane Heat.
I do. I'm a lot less stressed now, Goughy. Obviously, I went through the heart attack scenario on my 50th birthday last year. So
wow.
Now it's a case of, I suppose a combination of a lot of things, and then, unhealthy, drinking too many beers, having too many darts, all those things. And my father had passed away from heart disease as well, 4 years prior. So, it was in the family. But, I had to change a few things, obviously. But to wake up on your 50th birthday and at 4:30 in the morning, and I was just going to go watch my son play cricket, and I was really tight-chested. And I went, I better have a cigarette, see if that fixes it at 4:30 in the morning. And I didn't even want to have a cigarette, mate. So all of a sudden I'm going, wow, I'm in trouble here. So I rang the doctor, who then got the ambulance over, and the ambulance gave me a spray. It's called a GTN. It's like a spray that opens up your blood vessels. And they give it to you over a 15-minute period, and each time it's supposed to ease you off a little bit. But if it doesn't ease off, then it's not a heart attack, it's something else. But it eased off, and after 15 minutes, I was feeling great. So I said, thanks very much, lads, see you later. And they said, no, hop on the trolley, you're coming with us. An hour later, I was having an angiogram. An hour after that, I was booked in for a triple bypass. So life changed pretty quickly for me, Reg. But again, in a weird way, it sort of just puts things into perspective a little bit. I mean, cricket is only a game, and I'm there now. So when I was younger, I played it as a game. Then you go through all the other different things, ups and downs, and it becomes your life. You think too much. You know, all those you get back to when you're older, playing it like it's just a game again. When you start coaching, it's a game. Then when you end up coaching like I am now, it's a game. We're not trying to cure cancer. We're literally playing a game to entertain people. And, you know, that's probably where I'm at now with the game itself, and trying to make the game better and trying to help the young guys understand that there's going to be lots of ups and downs in the game itself. As long as you're healthy and your family's okay, that's the most important thing. So, and I think COVID's taught us that a bit too, Goughy. I mean, I've actually enjoyed COVID. One, I was recuperating through. I had sort of 6 months where I couldn't do much with the heart attack, and I don't know whether you can sort of see the scars they've taken out of my arms and such that way. And I sort of, you sort of get to the stage where you go, you know what, there's lots of good things out in life, and you shouldn't get too stressed with anything. People make mistakes. I mean, I'm still making mistakes as a coach. I'll make them as a husband. I'll make them as a person. As long as you learn from them, and as long as the kids are healthy and they're going okay, that's probably the most important thing. And as long as my friends are happy, you certainly find out through the tough times who your friends and family are. There's no doubt about that. I've had unbelievable messages from lots of people throughout the last few years, especially over the last 12 months with a heart attack. And that's been a really interesting one for me, because you sort of work out, you know, we always have this big circle of friends, don't we, lads? That you sort of a lot, but you sort of narrow it down as you get a bit older. I think I still love a lot of people and love talking to people, but you know, when I'm at my most peace is just when I'm around family and really close friends now.
So, I mean, obviously, you tried to raise a bit of money, and you did raise a bit of money. Obviously, recuperating, did a lot of walking, Buff. So, you brought a lot of awareness out there, especially in Australia as well. So, again, something good came out of it.
Yeah, it did, mate. It's like you with your charities. You do a lot of walking and a lot of awareness, and that's really important. I think whatever the charity is, just the awareness is what we can do. Yes, the funds are great and that helps, but it's almost the awareness of what you're doing and what you're trying to achieve as a foundation or a charity. So I've been fortunate enough to spend a lot more time with charities now, and because I'm still alive for a start, until you realise that they need as much help as they possibly can. So all the charities, I never have, I don't think I've ever said no to a charity anyway, but you know, you spend a lot more time on charity work, as you all know. I mean, the amount of charity work you do, and you know, MBE, Mr. Gough. I mean, there's a lot of things that you've done that you'd be extremely proud of. None so much more than obviously Anna and the boys, but the charity work you've done around the place has been second to none, and that's something I'm really proud of you for.
Thanks, mate. Let's just quickly get on to the Big Bash, because, like I say, it's very popular in the UK. It's obviously very popular where you are, and you're one of the coaches. It's your team this year. What's it like? And how do you find the old Big Bash experience? Is there a big difference between the Big Bash and the IPL?
Yeah, it is. There's not as many superstars as such as the IPL, obviously, because you know the international cricket's going on. But we're probably doing a really big favour for England. We keep picking all these England players, Goughy, for the World T20. They'll know what's going on out here. You know, we've got. I'm just watching Sam Billings at the moment. He's been a revelation for obviously those boys, and that's been thunder. And they look like they're. Six is going to win that game. We've had obviously Dan Lawrence, who will probably make his test debut for England. At the moment we've got Joe Denley, who's a ripper lad, and Lewis Gregory. We've been lucky enough to have those guys with us. The tournament's still fantastic. A lot of fun to be a part of. We've got to look at the length of the tournament. It's still probably a little bit too long, which we know. But at the moment with COVID times, and you know, we were supposed to be in Melbourne today, but yesterday they said no, you're flying to Canberra. So with COVID, it's all a little bit different. I suppose it's the same with the English Premier League at the moment and the football leagues. You know, you're not sure whether you're going to be on or off, where you're playing. The tournament itself still alive and kicking and going, really, really enjoyable to be a part of. And the guys, our team's been a little bit hot and cold. We've had games where we've played 9 games and 8 games have gone down the last over for us, Goughy, and 3 have gone down to the last ball. That's unbelievable, isn't it? Unbelievable.
That is unbelievable.
Good for lucky I've got a new heart, Goughy. Tell you what, ticker, no good for the ticker.
It is a good job.
God, so,
dear me.
Yeah,
what about
we've had so many?
What about the new rules, Buff? I mean, what's the new rules? Have you enjoyed being a coach with these new rules, or have they worked?
Yeah, they've been really good, mate. The X factor is sort of yes and no. That's just used occasionally, so that's helped a little bit. But the actual power surge and the split up of the overs, the first 4 and then the middle 2, where you can take an extra 2 overs, that's been unbelievable. Because what's the great thing with that is the 4 overs now, everyone's going back to fast bowling and trying to swing the ball. It's fantastic. And then the 2 overs, you might use a spinner. Or if you're in trouble, you can actually get out of a bit of trouble with the bat. So it's actually been, pretty good. I've actually enjoyed it. And it'd be interesting to see what your English boys think of it when they go back home. Because I think they'll think it's worth doing. And we have a point for halfway as well. So you've got to be in front at 10 overs. So you get 4 points in the game, 1 for half, 3 for the end of the game. You normally win all 4, but we've had games where, when someone makes 220 or 30 and you're 3 for 30 off 2.5 and you can't get the 230, well, you chase the 110 and go for it off 10 overs and you might get them 9 for 111, you get a point. So at least it's not a boring game. Either way, they just keep going. So it's been quite good, mate. I think they've made some good changes to it. It'll be interesting to see how it washes up at the end of the year, but at the moment, those couple of changes have been pretty good.
I think it's brilliant. I was excited when I first saw it before it was even played in the games. And since watching it and seeing how it works, it's been hilarious. I've absolutely loved it because it breaks down the game into other little games. And that's what's great. I'm with you on the X Factor cricketer because it's almost like the strikers. They were playing their spinner, bowling 1 over. Oh, it's not turning, and then take him off and put on a fast bowler. I didn't get that one. It wasn't really you bowl 1 over and then you're off, and we'll replace you with a fast bowler.
What I think it's there for is if you bat first and you're 5 for not many at 10 overs, and you need an extra batter to give you a score. Basically, that's what it's there for. Yeah. As we sort of worked out, or if you bowl first. And you're right, the spinner doesn't spin it. He bowls 1 over, doesn't spin it, and you bring on a quick or vice versa. That's probably there. That's the 2 reasons.
Both, what we do with all the guests when we finish in these is, but we build this Frankenstein cricketer, right? And it's the ultimate cricketer. And what we're going to do with you is like people that are from the Big Bash, right? So we've got 6 categories, right? So you're going to think about the players that are with it. You know most of them anyway. I've been around Australian cricket for a long, long time. If you had to pick one batsman now, you're picking the team, you're going out there. Who's the batsman you want in your side?
They're going to be current or past?
Current. Got to be current, mate. Big Bash.
Current.
You're starting with you're getting a new franchise tomorrow, right?
Our Big Bash. Out of our Big Bash.
Oh, your Big Bash, yeah. Who's the player you want in your side if you could pick the dream batsman?
I can't pick AB de Villiers, can I? Because he's not here this year.
He's your overseas player. So you can have an overseas player. I'll put you a special case on. Okay. So you've got AB de Villiers, right?
He's got to have him. If I go raw power, I'd go Chris Lynn.
Right. Chris Lynn is your batsman you've picked. What about your fast bowler and why?
Fast bowler. And I can't have... oh, God, that's a good one, isn't it? because you want pace. You need some. You need some pace. I'd love Darren Gough with his tricks, but I can't have him. The current BBL teams, you probably have to have someone like Harris Ralph. Oh no, he's overseas. I can't have him. Okay, I'll go Jai Richardson from Perth Scorchers.
Yeah, like him.
Swings it both ways, and he's got some pace.
His agent will be in touch, Buff. Don't worry. What about spin bowler? You've got some good spin bowlers. Which spin bowler would you like?
Well, you'd want Rashid Khan, but I can't have him. I've got AB de Villiers, and I'd have Najib as well. I can't have him. So I'll have Mitchell Swepson, even though he's not playing at the moment. He's with Australia, but he'd be the one you look at, or an Adam Zampa, someone like that.
Wicket keeper.
You'd probably like the excitement machine of Philippi from the Sixers, or someone like Inglis. So I'll go Philippi.
Carey? What about Carey?
Carey's good. Yeah, Carey's good as well. It's a lottery, mate. It's a lottery. They're all good. Yeah, I mean, our bloke Pearson's done well for us. So yeah, there's been a lot there. So actually, I'll go Carey because he's a left-hander. There you go.
Yeah, you're going to support the left-handers. Who's going to skipper your side, though, mate? Who are you going to have as captain?
Well, if I was to pick a sort of captain to, do I have to have one of those players, or I can have anyone?
You can have anybody you want, mate. It's your side. You're picking it.
Yeah, I would probably have someone like Moses Enriques. He's been very good in terms of captaining the Sixers with a team that gel together, and he's tactically very good. He's obviously not playing because he's with Australia, but his record is excellent as a captain.
I'll tell you one who's actually captain well in England is Dan Christian. Buff, do you know much of Dan Christian? He's done an excellent job over with Notts.
Yeah, he hit last ball forward to win them the game against us the other night, and obviously he played for the Heat. Yeah. And I've had a lot with Dan Christian over the years, so he's a fantastic cricketer and really good bloke. So I know Notts is his second home as well, so he's very knowledgeable in the game and how he goes about it. And the grounds suit him there. They're not big grounds. He uses his off pace well. He's a good fielder, and he can certainly whack it at the end. So, he's one of those players you need in your side.
The one thing we haven't picked yet is the fielder. In your book, in the Big Bash, if you could pick just a guy, just to field, the X Factor player, who would it be?
Or would it be? So they're just fielding, yeah?
Just fielding.
Okay, I'll go Jordan Silk. And a lot of people wouldn't know Jordan Silk, but he goes all right. He plays for the Sydney Sixers, and he's as good a fielder going around.
Brilliant. Absolutely. Fantastic. Fantastic six you've got there, Buff. And finally, Buff, from me, I'm coaching in the 100. I know it was supposed to be last year, but obviously a blessing with everything that's going on with COVID, and then yourself with the triple heart bypass. You're still going to be coaching the 100 for the Northern Superchargers?
Yeah, I'm up your way still, Goughy, so looking forward to that. That's obviously waiting for the draws to come out, and then we've got a draft coming up in February, so there's players being retained, and obviously other players go back into a draft, so I'm looking forward to that. I'll tell you what, we played a T10 game the other week, and I don't know whether you got to see it. It was Heat versus, I'm just trying to think who we played against, and it was an amazing game. We got 129 in 10 overs, and they got 120, for example. And I was going, that's 60 balls. I'm just trying to think with 100 balls when they just keep going what the score will be, because you do have a lull period in T20 now. Like in T20, you do have about 4 overs where you're just knocking it around to keep your wickets intact.
Yep.
And they're getting rid of that. So I'm actually quite interested to see how it'll go, because I think they're just going to keep going. They're not going to stop.
A good game's a quick game. A good game's a quick game. So have you still got Ben Stokes? Is it still the same list? Because obviously your side was just about done last year. You had Ben Stokes as your centrally contracted. You had Adil Rashid, David Willey. You had Finch, Majib. I mean, how's that work now?
Well, you've got to release So they've got a draft. They're waiting for the rules to sort of be finalised in the next little bit. I think it's by the end of I think January 27, and then you'll get a list of what's been retained, what's been let go, who goes back in the list, and then it'll happen from there. So we've got meetings every week at the moment to sort that out. So I can't give too much away, Ledge, but you're trying to keep and then you've got availability with all the England players, what they can play and can't play. But for our side, if we can keep Ben Stokes, obviously we'll try and keep him.
Exactly. I think most people would want Ben Stokes in their side. Both, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Slightly longer than we normally do, but I could chat to you all day, mate. I've not seen you for a while. It's great to see you looking healthy. It's the fittest I've seen you for a long time, by the way. For anybody who wants to have a listen, make sure you like and subscribe to all the Players Lounge social channels. We've got some great guests with raw opinion and some great experience. So thanks to Betway once again for supporting it. Buff, you're an absolute ledge. I love you and bless you, and good luck to the Heat in the Big Bash.
Thanks very much, Les. Thanks to the Players Lounge for having me on, and also obviously love to Anna and the boys, mate. Look after yourself, and I'll see everyone soon.
You're a ledge, mate. See you soon.